where we're at and what we've heard and what we've learned today, and then close by singing the doxology. Does everybody know the doxology? All right, so when you hear me start to sing, try to sing, just join me at the end of some quiet after Joel speaks today. So, Joel, what do you think? We can try and say this prayer together? Let's see if we can do that. Does everybody have their Baha'i tradition there open? And Joel, let's talk to us a little bit about Baha'i too this morning. But, let us pray. I have risen this morning by thy grace, O my God, and left my home trusting wholly in thee, and committing myself to thy care. Send down then upon me, out of the heaven of thy mercy, a blessing from thy side, and enable me to return home in safety, even as thou didst enable me to set out under thy protection, with my thoughts fixed steadfastly upon thee. There is none other God but thee, the one, the incomparable, the all-knowing, the all-wise. Amen. Well, our restrooms are right outside the door there if anybody needs those, and feel free to help yourself to more refreshments as the day continues. But I'll hand it to you.
Okay. So I was asked to kick off this speaker series on comparative religion, primarily because I teach two comparative religion classes at UWF through the Center for Lifelong Learning program. The morning class is a speaker series where I have various speakers come in. This is a list of the speakers that I have this semester. So the first week was Mormon. Then you may know Mark Fitzhugh, Father Fitzhugh, the Episcopal rector. So last week we had Major Kevin Humphreys, who is an Air Force chaplain and a member of the First Baptist Church. This coming Friday is a Shia Muslim. Week after that is Ernie Lopez, who's a Baha'i. He's Native American, lived in Israel for over 20 years. After that is a Hindu priest. Then Roger Piedro, you may know Roger, he's the pastor at the First Christian Church, instrumental in the efforts to help the homeless. And then the last week we've got an Orthodox rabbi. There's an Orthodox synagogue in Destin. And I think in 2 days they're having Marty Siegel speak. Marty's spoken 2 or 3 times in my series in past years. The other class that I teach is an afternoon class, starts at 1 o'clock. It's more of a study, lecture, discussion type class. And so it's more of a sit down around a table and just talk about different topics. And last week we had a lively discussion about the New Testament teachings on resurrection. So these are the kind of things, this is kind of my background, and I think probably why I'm standing up here this morning. So I use iPad and Power Keynote to, in my afternoon class. These are just a few of the presentations that I've worked up. Commentary on the numbers in the book of Daniel, the return of Elijah, Native American religions. Let's see, Justin Martyr, who's lived about 81-50, wrote a letter to Caesar trying to get him to stop the persecution of the Christians. Mormon prophecies, Krishna, early church writings, various quizzes that I give. Rapture, resurrection, Zoroastrian religion, what Muhammad actually said in the Quran about the seal of the prophets, these kind of things. So my personal viewpoint, as Father Eric said, I'm a Baha'i, but I never proselytize. I never try to push that on people. Particularly in my Center for Lifelong Learning classes, I won't even tell them what my faith background is. I just tell them that I have a universal viewpoint. So I'd like to start out this presentation with some quotes, just to give you kind of an overview of my personal philosophy. It's a little bit difficult to see, but it says, "The creator of all is one God, and from the same God all creation sprang into existence. He is the one goal towards which everything in nature yearns. There can be no doubt whatever that the peoples of the world of whatever race or religion derive their inspiration from one heavenly source and are subjects of one God." So this is a Baha'i quote, and
Going the wrong way or the right way?
the wrong way. Well, yeah, you want it closer, I think.
Closer.
Yeah. I tried zooming it, but it didn't work.
Screens are falling.
So what this kind of philosophy does is creates an awareness that we're actually more alike than we are different. And that's what I try to show in my classes. Not to try to convert anyone to anything else, just to have you expand your understanding and expand your vision and your horizons to be more inclusive. And I know that the Episcopal Church is extremely inclusive, so in that I truly applaud you. Baha'i values, social values, and Episcopal values are very complementary. The Baha'i faith began in the mid-1800s in Israel, where a man appeared who claimed to be a prophet of God. And so he was originally from Iran. He was exiled from Iran to Israel. So in the middle of the 1800s, this man from Iran was advocating things like the elimination of racism, the equality of men and women, the need for global communication, global understanding, global cooperation. Truly remarkable statements from the middle of the 1800s. So the quote continues, "The difference between the ordinances under which they abide, the religions should abide, should be attributed to the varying requirements and exigencies of the age in which they were revealed. Arise, and armed with the power of faith, shatter to pieces the gods of your vain imaginings, the swords of dissension amongst you, and cleave to that which draweth you together and uniteth you." So what that's saying is that the world's religions and the Baha'i viewpoint are actually interconnected and interrelated and part of the same gigantic process. Much like the instruments in an orchestra, where you have the brass and the strings and the woodwinds. Each instrument is different, but each, when they come together, makes a beautiful music. Another analogy is the idea of many different notes coming together in a perfect chord. Different notes come together, and when they come together, they make something totally different and better than what they were before as separate entities. So the premise of this presentation is to show that God is systematic, progressive, and periodic in revealing his will to mankind through men, and we call messengers or prophets are manifestations of God. Some of the founders of the major world religions are manifestations of God are well known, others are not. The usual list of well-known prophets include Krishna, Buddha, Zoroaster, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, and the Baha'i prophet Baha'u'llah. Others include people like Joseph, Noah, Hud, Saleh, the Bab, the founders of the Sabaean religion, which was widespread in Chaldea at the time of Abraham. So if you go on Wikipedia, you can do a search for a list of the prophets of God, and it's a long list. I did a search one time, how many prophets of God appeared in the New Testament, in the Bible, and the answer came back about 50. So Hud, Saleh, these kind of people are actually mentioned in Genesis, but we know nothing about them. These are prophets that lived at a time that's, if their teachings were ever recorded, they've been lost. So the Apostle Paul explained the process of how God communicates to humanity from age to age, if Paul was the author of the book of Hebrews. But so the book of Hebrews opens with this statement. It says, "In the past, God spoke to our forefathers through the prophets at many times and in various ways." I'm going to just pass some books around for show and tell. This one is titled Abraham, One God, Three Wives, Five Religions. So the premise is that Abraham had three wives. I don't know if you know that he had three wives. You know about the two. But when Sarah died, he married again. And Keturah was his third wife, and she had 7 sons. And so the Bible, of course, is a covenant book. And the covenant that God established with Abraham said that through his family line, the world would be blessed. It says that Keturah's sons went to the east. So we're not entirely sure what that means, but it could be that religions like the Zoroastrian religion were related to the family line of Abraham through Keturah. Of course, the family line through Sarah was Judaism and Christianity. Hagar or Hajar, Islam traces its line through that line. The Baha'i faith actually traces its line both through Keturah and through Hajar. So the Baha'i founder is related to Abraham through those two. And he was royalty, so his genealogy can actually be traced back to the time of the Persian kings, 1000 BC. So I'll just pass that around.
Find these in any library? I see this is what, the college library?
No, I just got that from Amazon.
Oh, okay.
So it's interesting that maybe the covenant idea of the line of Abraham is actually a lot larger than people imagine. So from age to age, God sends prophets many times in various ways. The prophets of God not only lived in Israel, but they also lived in Egypt, they lived in Iraq, they lived in Iran. And that's just the biblical prophets. There were other prophets that appeared also. Native Americans had prophets. India had prophets. You've got Krishna and Buddha. We don't really know. There is speculation that the line of Abraham arose in Ur, which is in Iraq. And India is a lot closer to Ur than Israel is. So the speculation is, well, maybe the religions of India are actually related to Abraham also. Just as an interesting side note, it says in the book of Genesis that the Garden of Eden, it identifies the location of the Garden of Eden in the book of Genesis, and it says it was bounded by 4 rivers. 2 of the rivers we don't know where they are now, but the other 2 rivers are the Tigris and Euphrates. So the book of Genesis says that the Garden of Eden was in Iraq, between the Tigris and Euphrates. Right there at the bottom of the Tigris, no, the Euphrates is Ur, which is where Abraham is from. So to continue, it says each individual manifestation or prophet relays God's spiritual and social teachings to humanity. Each manifestation of God founds a religion. Each messenger establishes a covenant concerning the coming of the next manifestation who will appear after himself at a time in the future. This process of revelation has always existed and always will exist. It is a process that will never cease. So each one of the prophets appears, gives a teaching, and says, there's still more to come. There's one like me who's going to come, or I myself will return. So viewed this way, we can see that the religions founded by the various manifestations of God are an evolutionary process. That each manifestation of God brings a larger measure of revelation and understanding to humankind than the previous one. So it's like grades in school, where the different teachers of the grades in school all have the same knowledge, but they have a certain specific lesson plan that they have to give to humanity.
Would it be helpful if we cut the lights?
I don't know.
To see?
I don't know. Go ahead. So it says the differences in the messages, so that obviously there are differences in the messages. Christianity is actually profoundly different than Judaism, and yet you view it as the same religion from the same source, from the same God. The same is true of the other religions. The core teachings are identical. The social implementation of the teachings, the way people act, is in many ways extremely different. So it says if the difference of the messages brought by the manifestations of God can be attributed to the various social and human needs. The people at the time need a certain thing, and so this message from the prophet is tailored to the needs of that people. The conditions and varying requirements of the age and the spiritual capacity of humanity. These differences are seen to be needed to serve the needs of a society that has progressively evolved through higher and higher stages of unity, from family to tribe to nations, and now we're at the stage of world. So the manifestations of God have each proclaimed eternal moral and spiritual truths that do not change, and which are renewed from age to age. At the same time, there are social teachings that are modified and discarded to meet the social needs of humanity at that stage of its development. Social teachings may include things such as laws of conduct, diet, institutions, ceremonies, prayer. These may also change significantly from manifestation to manifestation. And many of the differences are cultural, totally man-made. So, so one of the things I do in my class is I will give people quizzes, and this is one of the quizzes. I've taken excerpts from some of these presentations and just taken highlights from each one. So this is one of the quizzes that I give my students. This is a painting by Norman Rockwell, and the question is, which religion teaches the Golden Rule? So what I do is I'll put a quote up on the board, I guess, and I try to have the people try to guess what religion the quote is from. So the Golden Rule is an ethic of reciprocity. It's stated either in a positive manner or a negative manner. The positive way is that one should treat others as one would like yourself to be treated. The negative way of expressing the same idea is that you should not treat others the ways that you don't want to be treated. So here's the quiz. Who said, do to no one what you yourself dislike, and recognize that your neighbor feels as you do, and keep in mind your own dislikes? Which prophet of God said that?
Abraham Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln, okay.
Benjamin Franklin.
It almost sounds like something Benjamin Franklin.
Okay, that's Jewish.
That was my second.
That's Jewish. So at the time of Hillel, who was a famous rabbi who lived at the time of Jesus, he was asked to sum up the entire Torah concisely, and he answered, that which is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. That is the whole Torah, the rest is explanation or commentary. So that is Hillel at the time of Jesus. Who said, one should never do that to another which one regards as injurious to one's own self. This, in brief, is the rule of religion. Other behavior is due to selfish desires. Which prophet said that? Not Abraham Lincoln.
No, I was just going to say that.
That's Hindu.
Oh,
So who said, and you should forgive and overlook, do you not like God to forgive you? As you would have people do to you, do not do to them. And what you dislike to be done to you, don't do to them. None of you truly believes until he wishes for his brother that which he wishes for himself. Who said that? Help me out, people. Come on.
Muhammad.
Buddha, Muhammad.
Buddha's the one with the big stomach. That is Muhammad. How is he?
Muhammad was a prophet of God who appeared in Arabia in the 6th century after Jesus.
And do they have a statue then of him that they
No.
pray to or anything?
No images. Islam originally was very similar to Judaism, so there's no images. The Jewish law and the Islamic law are very similar. So if you hear about people concerned that Muslims are trying to bring Sharia into the West, people are concerned about that, but they're not concerned that the Jewish laws many ways identical to it. So there obviously are differences between what the prophet said and what people actually do. Some people, there's a billion Muslims, so who said, "Blessed is he who prefers his brother before himself, and if thine eyes be turned towards justice, turn thou from thy neighbor that which thou choosest for thyself. Ascribe not to any soul that which thou wouldst not have ascribed to thee, and say not that which thou doest not." I know you're not going to guess this one because this one's Baha'u'llah, the Baha'i founder.
How do you say that?
Baha'u'llah. Baha is glory.
Is Israeli?
Yes, he lived in Israel, yes. Born in Iran, exiled to Baghdad, exiled to Constantinople, exiled to the prison city of Akka in Israel, which
Is
is,
that one of their leaders, or is that what the religion?
that's the founder, yes.
The founders?
So the founder of the Baha'i faith, his name is Baha'u'llah. His name means the glory of God. So this is a chart, lists the golden rule and the various teachings and the various religions. The point being is that all the religions teach pretty much identical ethical teachings. So in that sense, that is the thing that can unite us, allow us to work together. So this is a list of some of the quizzes that I give to the class. Which religion taught I am the only way? They all did. Which one teaches that I am the way to salvation? They all do. Which teaches the golden rule? They all do. Which teaches that follow me, you'll have everlasting life? They all do. Judaism is kind of split between a viewpoint that does not believe that there's an afterlife and that there is.
When you say all, you mean basically the 7 major religions?
Yes.
You're talking about some of the smaller religions and not
Yeah.
Thanks.
We have seven,
The seven-
major religions?
7 major religions. I guess you could argue over the number, but yeah.
2 questions. When you say that they all have the saying, follow me and you'll go to, only through me you can go to heaven.
Uh-huh.
Who is the me?
The prophet,
What prophet?
the founder of each one of the religions.
And not Jesus.
Jesus too, yes.
Christianity is Jesus.
He's one of, I understand he's one of the prophets.
Yes. So each one of the founders of the world's religions. So you've got Krishna, Buddha, Zoroaster, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad. Each one essentially teaches the exact same things. Come to me. I am the way to God. These kind of teachings.
But the second question, you said Sharia law and Judaism, the Jews' law,
Yes.
are basically the same.
Yes.
And are practiced.
Yes.
But the Sharia law teaches a much more violent lifestyle than the Jewish religion does.
Well, look at Jewish history, and
Does not, the Jewish religion in this country does not teach the killing of someone who steps outside of their religion.
well, they
Sharia
used
law,
to. They used to.
That was in the Middle Ages.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter. That's when they lived.
Well, it's not now.
Okay.
But the Sharia law still stands that if you step, and it's occurred in this country 4 times,
Okay.
honor killing.
Well, the last speaker in the series is a former Muslim who became a Christian, and by Islamic standards, he needs to be killed. The same thing is pretty much in Judaism too. If you read the history of Judaism in the Bible, you know, when they came across the river and attacked Jericho, they killed every living thing in the city. Man, woman, child, ox.
That was Old Testament law.
Well, that's Jewish law. So,
It's Old Testament law.
okay.
Jesus came to do away with it.
Okay. Well, this is an entire. I could do an hour on this presentation alone, but so please let me continue. And we can discuss this later if you like. So these are some of the. Then I move into some of the specific religions. This is in my class. So this is just a few frames from the presentation that I do on Krishna. Krishna is the prophet who lived in India and the author of the book, the Bhagavad Gita. He's known as the 8th and complete avatar. An avatar, you saw the movie Avatar about the guy who inhabits a different body. That's kind of the idea of the coming of the prophets. The prophet of God, God speaks through the prophet. That's how Jesus explained his own relationship to God, is God lives in me and speaks through me, is what Jesus himself said. So that's what an avatar is. Krishna said that he was the 8th in a series of 10. The 9th actually is Gautama Buddha. They accept Gautama as the 9th avatar. Then they speak of a 10th avatar who at their time was still yet to come. So the Bhagavad Gita has 3 major themes: knowledge, action, and love. So although the Bhagavad Gita contains much theology, its essence is ethical. And its teachings is in the context of an ethical problem. The Bhagavad Gita, the setting of the Bhagavad Gita is a war. So it's a war between different factions. And if you look at the Bible, you'll find that much of the ethics of, much of the stories of the Bible is fought during wars. So Isaiah is fought during a war. Other parts of it, the Jews are in exile as slaves in places in Mesopotamia and in Egypt. So the maxim in the Bhagavad Gita is summed up is what your business is with the deed and not with the result. Do the right thing, don't worry about the outcome. So knowledge, action, and love. I don't think you can find the exact same teachings in the Bible and in Christianity. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna said, whenever there is decay of righteousness and there is exaltation of unrighteousness, then I myself come forth. For the destruction of evildoers, for the sake of firmly establishing righteousness, I am born from age to age. So Krishna promised to return. So the question is, who were the returns of Krishna? Was Jesus a return of Krishna? Is this part of the same process? And I'll leave you to decide that for yourself.
I've never heard of that before. Where are they?
India.
Oh, India?
It's the core teachings of the Hindu religion.
So what you're saying, the 10 avatars are not defined by name in the Gita?
2 are, Krishna and Buddha. They don't mention Buddha specifically, but Hindus recognize Buddha as the 9th avatar.
Buddha grew up as a Hindu initially, correct?
Well, he grew up in India, so he was a prince, and he went out into the world, and don't really have time to get into many of the details, but he lived about, it says 563 BC, approximately 600 BC, in India. So one of the questions, and your Buddhist speaker who's coming later this week will probably say that Buddhists do not believe in God. Maybe. I'll pass this one around. This is a book written by a Persian Baha'i, Iranian Baha'i, and it's the God of Buddha. It's this. So what Buddha taught. So the question is, if Buddha was one in a series of many Buddhas, and if at least one future Buddha was still yet to arise, then this would suggest an age-long process of revelation. So the question is, where did the process come from? So Buddha preached that every effect had a cause, and that a causeless cause of all causes, an ultimate reality, a boundless light, must clearly be infinite, unlimited, and without attributes. That's his way of saying that his teachings came from a power outside of himself. Call that power God, if you like. So in a famous text of Buddhism, it says, Buddha said, O disciples, there is a non-born, a non-produced, a non-created, and a non-formed. If there were not, O disciples, a non-born, a non-produced, and a non-created, and a non-formed, there would be no issue for the born, the produced, the created, the formed. So it says there's a non-born force that was animating him. You call that God if you like. So Buddha maintained that everything in the world came into existence due to the law of karma, the law of cause and effect, action and reaction. There can be no action without the doer and the willer of action. Therefore, there must have been a creator of the law of karma. Some people call him God. Buddha called him the first cause.
What did you say the law of karma again was? Because I find my sons in his...
Law of karma. Do unto as you sow, so shall you reap.
You gave the two opposites, the exist or something. What did you say right after?
Well, what I'm trying to establish here is that the Buddha said that his teachings actually came from an outside source. So what is the outside source? What do you call that? This is the Eightfold Path of Buddhism. I don't think that there's really much contradiction in anything that's Christian. Right view, right intentions, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right concentration, right mindfulness. So again...
What do these kids mean then when they're saying a lot? Well, that reaching my karma, or that's my karma, or...
karma is just striving towards a higher goal.
Okay.
So Buddha himself also promised to return. He said, I am not the first Buddha who came upon the earth, nor shall I be the last. In due time, another Buddha shall arise in the world. So I brought this book for show and tell. The Buddhist messianic figure is called Maitreya or Amitabha. So this is a book about the fulfillment of Buddhist prophecies. So you're beginning to see the pattern here, the trends, that they actually promise to return from age to age. So Buddha identifies the return of himself as a holy one, a supremely enlightened one, endowed with wisdom and conduct, auspicious, knowing the universe, an incomparable leader of men, a master of angels and mortals. He will reveal to you the same eternal truths which I have taught you. He will preach to you his religion, glorious in its origin, glorious at the climax, and glorious in the goal, in spirit and in the letter. So this is Buddha talking about the coming of the future Buddha. Again, he will proclaim a religious life wholly perfect and pure, such as I now proclaim. His disciples will number many thousands, while mine number many hundreds. So he says that the effect of this future Buddha on the world will be significantly greater than his own. So one name for the future Buddha is Amitabha. Amitabha is translatable as most glorious light. The name Amitabha is derived from the prefix Amita, which means infinite or unbounded, and the suffix Abha, which means most glorious, and is the superlative form of the word Baha, or boundless glory. So as to a Baha'i, that has profound significance.
Yes, sir. Do they, when they have this second coming, do they indicate that that's the end of the world?
Nowhere in any of the writings does it ever say that the world is ending. The Bible does not teach that the world is ending. Anybody?
Thank you.
So in the 24th chapter of Matthew, Jesus was asked, when will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the world? That's in the King James. It's a mistranslation. The word in the original Greek is not world, it's aeon, the end of the age, or the end of the era. And the sign of your coming in the original Greek is parousia. So what they're actually asking in the original Greek is, when is the presence going to return and the birth of the new age? This is 24th chapter of Matthew. So in the book of Revelation, it does not talk about the end of the world. It says it's a time when all things will be made new. You get a whole new Jerusalem, all things made new. So the world is not ending. None of the prophets ever taught that the world is ending. We're actually at the point where it's kicking into high gear, and it's actually becoming really interesting now. So for the first time in history, we can see ourselves as one species on the planet. And so I can get on my phone and literally talk to anyone in the world and see them while I'm talking. So technologically, we already are one people. We just have to learn to cooperate more. And what the founders of the religion said is that somebody's going to come and he's going to accomplish this for you. He's going to give you new teachings. This is what the New Jerusalem is new teachings.
In view of what you just said, does that not mean that we are heading back toward the Tower of Babel?
I think it's quite the opposite. One of the Baha'i teachings is actually that there needs to be a world language that you learn in addition to the language that you currently speak. So it's the opposite of Babel. So I've been to various countries throughout the world, and I know the problems that people have communicating. I know the problems that I had communicating with people in Guatemala or in Germany or France or whatever. So what the Baha'i teachings say is that in addition to the language that you currently speak, learn a second world language. So no matter where you go in the world, you can communicate. I'm going to try to keep moving. So the Zoroastrian religion is a monotheistic religion, very similar to the law of Moses, founded about 1000 BC in Persia, or Iran, by the prophet Zoroaster. Also known as Zarathustra, in the Persian tongue it's Zardosht. It was formerly one of the world's largest religions. So a religion that began in Iran used to be one of the world's largest religions. Monotheistic and remarkable connection with Christianity. So Zoroastrianism was the main religion of the Persian kings for 200 years until they were conquered by Alexander the Great in 330 BC. The Greeks ruled West Asia, and Alexander didn't like Zoroastrian, and neither did the Parthians, who were the empire at the time in the region, in Persia and in Iraq. But the Sassanids, who were another empire who arose after the Parthians, did like him. So they took over the Parthian Empire in 227 AD, and the Sassanians were very strong believers in Zoroastrian. Baha'u'llah, the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith, his line goes back to the kings of the ancient Sassanian dynasty. So through them, he's also related to Cyrus the Great, and through Cyrus the Great, he's related to King David of Israel. So the movie 2001, Space Odyssey, the theme song was Also Sprach Zarathustra. Also spoke Zoroaster, is what that means. Zoroastrians believe that there is one universal and transcendent God. Their name for God is Ahura Mazda. He is said to be the one created creator whom all worship is ultimately directed. The Zoroastrian religion states that active participation in life through good thoughts, good words, and good deeds is necessary. I had a friend from India when I lived in southern Illinois. He said that the reputation of the Zoroastrians is such that if you're selling a car in the newspaper and in the one ad it says Parsi owned, the Parsis are Zoroastrians, you know that he's not going to cheat you because the Parsis are that honest. Zoroastrian religion began in Iran when Muhammad appeared in the region. He didn't do it, but his followers after him conquered the region, conquered Iran. And although the Zoroastrians were considered people of the book, Christians, Jews, Zoroastrians were all considered people of the covenant, people of the book. Zoroastrians were treated pretty horribly, and many of them emigrated to India. So in India, they're known as Parsi, which is another word for Persian. So this is where it gets interesting. Zoroaster, who lived about 1000 BC, foretold the appearance of three saviors who would each appear about 1,000 years apart. And I can get into the number symbolism, but I don't have time here. So the first of these saviors may have been Jesus. There is speculation that the wise men who traveled to visit the infant Jesus were Persian Zoroastrians. So they recognized the time of the fulfillment of the prophecies. However wise men there were, they got on their camels, traveled through incredible danger to the west, and came to the child. They found the child, and they recognized him. I was in the British Museum about a year ago, and at the time they had an exhibit, Wise Man from the East, Zoroastrian Traditions in Persia and Beyond. So this is a very common theme in the East, that the Zoroastrians, the Magi were Zoroastrians. One interesting thing is that the three gifts that the wise men brought were gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Frankincense is a priestly item. Myrrh is a healing balm, and gold. So one of the stories is they were testing the child to see which he would be, a king, a priest, or a healer. And supposedly the child accepted all three. What's interesting is there's a story that the king tried to kill Jesus when he was born. He heard that a new king had been born. The wise men came to the king and says, we're looking for the child who's going to be king. And so Herod wanted to kill Jesus. And the story is that this poor family, Joseph was a carpenter and probably a farmer, was then able to afford a trip into Egypt, which saved Jesus' life. So one of the gifts to them was gold from the wise men. So in that sense, the coming of the wise men to see Jesus was a rescue mission. And because of that, his life was saved. So Zoroaster said that 3 prophets would appear. The second, it looks like, may have been, appeared in 600 AD and may have been Muhammad. And he also foretold the appearance of a third Savior. One of the names of this third Messiah is Shabaram. Shabaram, King, Glory of God. The name Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, is Glory of God. And actually most of the Parsi, most of the Zoroastrians of Iran have already become Baha'is because they recognize the fulfillment of their prophecies. So this is what Zoroaster said. He shall be the victorious benefactor or the savior by name and world renovator. He is benefactor because he will benefit the entire world. He is world renovator because he will establish the physical living existence indestructible. So again, the prophet of God foretells someone to come after himself. I guess I'll pass this one around. This is a Baha'i commentary on Bible prophecies. So Baha'u'llah claims to be the fulfillment of the prophecies of Isaiah, of Daniel, of the book of Revelation. So the interesting premise is that in the middle of the 1800s, in Israel, a prophet of God appeared. So I'll just kind of leave it at that. This is, I last night on my couch putting this presentation together, and this is kind of where I ran out of time. But obviously Judaism has messianic prophecies. There are prophets that foretold someone else to come. Jesus was one of them. And then Jesus himself said that he again is going to return, and a new Jerusalem is going to come. I can do presentations. I've got presentations on there where I explain the number of prophecies of the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation. What's interesting is the book of Revelation, 7 different times within 3 chapters, 11th, 12th, and 13th chapter of the book of Revelation, mentions the number 1260 as the time when this is going to happen, when the messianic figure is going to appear. It's stated in code different ways. It's stated as 1260 days, as 42 months, as 3.5 years, 3.5 times. They're all the same number. There are 1260 days and 42 months. There are 1260 days and 3.5 years. So it's the same number 7 times in the book of Revelation and within 3 chapters. The same number also appears in the book of Daniel 2 or 3 times as the time when the messianic figure is in the last chapter of the book of Daniel. This is the time frame that is given. In Islam, particularly Shia Islam, Sunni and Shia Islam both have messianic expectations, Shia more so. Sunni doesn't dwell very much on it. In fact, they don't even like to talk about it. Shia, there are Shia prophecies, Shia Islamic prophecies that say that their Messiah, their Mahdi, will appear in the year 1260 of their calendar. So again, the number 1260 appears not only in the book of Revelation, the book of Daniel, but also appears in the Islamic prophecies. I recently got a translation of I've had a statement in ancient Persian that I actually just recently got translated, and it says that the Zoroastrian religion also points to the year 1260 as a time when this person is going to come. So in this country, you had people like William Miller, who calculated the Bible prophecies. William Miller is the founder of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. He calculated the prophecies that Christ was supposed to return in the year 1844 of the Christian calendar. What's interesting is the year 1260 of the Islamic calendar is 1844. So 4 different religions, 3,000 years, different countries, they all point to the same time in history. So,
Vernon Miller out of the ones, the Mormons or?
no, not Mormon, no, that's Seventh-day
Latter-day
Adventist.
Saints?
No, that's Joseph Smith. So William Miller was Seventh-day Adventist. He pointed to the year 1844 as the time that Christ was supposed to appear. The Baha'i faith began in 1844 when a prophet appeared and said, "I'm the one you've been expecting." The prophets usually come in pairs. So the first one that appeared was a forerunner, kind of like John the Baptist. He taught for, I think it was 6 years, and he was killed very much in the same way that Jesus was killed. After him came the second prophet, that was Baha'u'llah. I'm not going to dwell on that very much, but it's interesting how it all fits together. I've got another presentation on here about the return of Elijah. Got about 20 minutes left, is that right? Or?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Return of Elijah. So there is a prophecy in Malachi, the last book of the Old Testament, that says before the Christ comes, Elijah is going to return. In the book of 2 Kings, it says that Elijah the prophet had ascended into heaven in a chariot of fire. And so then Malachi says that before the Christ comes, Elijah is going to return. So this is what the Jews were looking for 2,000 years ago. The Messiah is going to come, and Elijah is going to come to herald his appearance. So in the 17th chapter of Matthew and the 9th chapter of Mark, the Jewish rabbis come to the apostles and they say, Jesus is claiming to be the Messiah, but where is Elijah? We haven't seen any chariots of fire coming down from the sky. Elijah has to return before the Christ can appear, so how can Jesus be the Messiah? So what Jesus answered to them is that, you're right, it is true, it does say that, but they didn't understand how the prophecy was fulfilled. He says that the return of Elijah from heaven was the appearance of John the Baptist. So the expectation of the Jewish people was that Elijah is going to return from heaven in a chariot of fire, announce the coming of the Messiah, and the Messiah is going to destroy the Romans. What they got was John the Baptist. A guy wearing a loincloth and eating grasshoppers, came walking out of the desert. And the thing that they hated the worst about, that the Jewish priests hated the most about John the Baptist, is he called them a generation of vipers, a generation of snakes. So the snake obviously caused the fall of humanity in the Garden of Eden story. So the rabbis weren't big fans of John the Baptist. And yet Jesus said he was the return of Elijah. In the same prophecy in Malachi, the only time in the Old Testament it says this. It says, I am God, I do not change. So there apparently is a message here that is extremely significant. And this is the process of how prophets return from age to age. Return of the body or the person of the former prophet, it's the return of the voice who spoke through them, who speaks again through another human voice, through another human person. So the return of Krishna is not the return of the person who lived 4,500 years ago. It's the voice speaking again. The return of Buddha is not the return of the person who lived 2,600 years ago. It's the same voice. The coming of the Jewish Messiah, the return of the Christ, the coming of the Islamic Mahdi. It's the modus operandi, the process by which this happens is the same voice returns and speaks through the prophet. So this is actually who Baha'u'llah claims to be. That's pretty much all I'm going to say about it, except that I want you to just know that an individual did appear in Israel in the mid-1800s who claimed to be the fulfillment not only of the Islamic prophecies, the New Testament prophecies, the Jewish prophecies, but also the Zoroastrian prophecies, the Buddhist, the Hindu. It's all part of the same process that one day, as Isaiah said, at the end of the book of Isaiah says that we will be brought together as one fold, as one family. I guess I'll hand these out. Take one and pass them around if you would. from a Baha'i viewpoint, we've already entered the age that has been foretold in all the holy books. Just in general terms, the Bible says that it's a time when the Jews will return to Israel and when knowledge will greatly increase. We're there. The Jews have returned. In fact, Isaiah says that the Messiah will appear and gather the Jews back to him. So, getting back to the idea of comparative religion, we can see that the core teachings of all the religions, the ethical teachings, are identical. They all teach the golden rule. They all teach, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Each one formed a great society, arose in the region where the prophet appeared. And when I was in, my son was stationed in Germany, so I went to Germany, and I noticed that each region in Germany speaks a different language. It really struck me that the people could be so isolated from each other on the same landmass that they actually developed different languages. So you've got Spanish, you've got German, you've got French, you've got Italian, you've got Polish, you've got Russian, you've got English, you've got Danish, you've got all the languages of the Balkans. That there was a time when humanity was so isolated from each other that we could actually develop different languages like that, different cultures. Of course, most of the governments for pretty much all of recorded human history was kind of based on the model of the mafia, where the guy with the most power is the king. So the process that we're moving towards now is more of a process where individual people get to choose. In the past, the rights of women were suppressed. We're in an age now where that's no longer a reality. I have a friend who is a professor at Vanderbilt, wrote a book titled Respect, and it's a story of the rise of the status of women. She also wrote a Broadway play that's toured all over the world. But one of the things, her name is Dorothy Marsick, by the way, but one of the things that she teaches, is that in the middle of the 1800s, women were not allowed to go to college. To make a long story short, in the middle of the 1990s, more women graduated from college than men. In the 2000s, more women got advanced graduate degrees than men. And now women are starting to break the glass ceiling and becoming heads of corporations. So the question is, did something change in women in the middle of the 1800s? Or is this something that they always had the capacity to do, but never really had the opportunity? There was a time when people of one race would go somewhere else in the world and enslave an entire other race and bring hundreds of thousands of them to work as slaves. That's no longer acknowledged as a good thing. Not only is slavery kind of always has been a bad thing, especially with the rise of the Industrial Revolution. We don't really need slaves anymore, so the need for slaves has actually kind of disappeared. But now we're at the stage in our development where we can actually see each other as one people, as one species on the planet. So any human anywhere on the earth can, let's say, marry and have children with any other human of any other race on the earth and still produce a totally normal human child. So that is an indication that we're actually all one people. We always have been, but the geographical differences have divided us. Language, the Baha'i Faith teaches that we should have a second universal language, so no matter where we go, we can communicate. By having a second language, it preserves the cultural integrity of your original language. So your literature, you don't lose that, but it just expands your horizon a little bit. These are just some pictures. Baha'i. I did a search for Baha'i. This is Mount Carmel in Israel. This is the Baha'i World Center. So Isaiah said that the glory of God would come to Mount Carmel, Akka, and the Plain of Sharon. So Mount Carmel is located on the Plain of Sharon, and at the foot of Akka, at the foot of Mount Carmel, is the city of Akka. In the middle of the 1800s, Akka was a Turkish prison, and this is where Baha'u'llah, the founder, prophet founder of the Baha'i faith, was sent as a prisoner. At the time, Akka was such a vermin-infested place that people who were sent there usually died. So a prophet of God arises. The religion at the time, which at that time was Islam, puts him in prison, exiles him from his home in Iran to Baghdad, to Constantinople, and finally to Mount Carmel. In the 16th chapter of the book of Revelation, it talks about the coming of the royal ones, or the kings, from the east. And it says they come from the land of the sun. And if you look on the flag of Iran, the symbol on the flag of Iran is a lion holding a sword with a background of the sun. It says that he is sent to the, then it says that the royal ones are sent to the Euphrates. And Baghdad, where Baha'u'llah was exiled, is located on the Euphrates. It says next that he will be sent to the seat of the beast. The book of Daniel identifies the beasts as the various empires that have arisen throughout history, namely the Babylonian, Persian, Greek, and there's other empires after that. At that time, the seat of the beast was Constantinople, the seat of the Sultan of Turkey. This is where Baha'u'llah was exiled next. And then, this is in the 16th chapter of the book of Revelation, it says that he will next be sent to the Har-Megiddo, the mountain of Megiddo. Armageddon literally means Har is mountain, Megiddo is the city of Megiddo. It's a strategic city in the northern part of Israel where the paths diverge through mountains. So it says that he will be sent to Megiddo. And Megiddo is Mount Carmel, and this is Mount Carmel. So Isaiah said he would come to Mount Carmel. Micah said he would come to Mount Carmel. And he's come to Mount Carmel. It says that he will give us a law. Isaiah said that he will give us a law that will renew religion. So what should our attitude be towards people of other religions? I try to establish that we're more alike than we are different, that if we get beyond some things that are more cultural than religious, then we can, as Father Eric did, go to the Buddhist temple and eat with them. We can interact with each other. So you don't have to view the other person as an enemy. Right now in Iran, when Ayatollah Khomeini came back from exile in Paris, he had two stated objectives. One was to oust the Shah. So that was the Iranian Revolution that ousted the Shah and put the Islamic clergy in power. So that was the one objective of Khomeini. The other objective was to destroy the Baha'is. So that began a campaign of arrests and executions of the Baha'i population. At that time, Baha'i was the second largest religion of Iran. Public opinion was such that the Iranians quickly learned that they could not actively just kill all Baha'is, although they wanted to. So then they began other programs to make Baha'i illegal. So Baha'is are not allowed to meet. They're not allowed to go to college. There was a time in Iran when Baha'is had a parallel society. They had their own banks, they had their own hospitals, they had their own schools. And the banks and hospitals and schools were open to everyone, not just Baha'is. So when Khomeini came in, the banks, the hospitals, everything was seized. Baha'i properties were destroyed. Baha'i cemeteries were bulldozed. Today, if you've seen the Daily Show with Jon Stewart took a leave of absence about a year ago and made a movie titled Rosewater. And it's the story of Mahyar Bahari. Bahari is not a Baha'i, but he's a journalist from London, and he was imprisoned in Iran for publicizing some of the riots in the streets. So when Bahari went on the Jon Stewart show to promote the movie, he wore a T-shirt that says, "Education is not a crime." What that's referring to is about the Baha'is in Iran. They're not allowed to go to college. So what they tried to do is the Baha'is started their own colleges. And then the people who organized the education programs in Iran, basically teaching each other in their homes, were arrested. And today, I don't know how many people are in Iranian prisons who were the people who wanted to educate their own children. They were arrested, put in prison, but there's dozens of them. Baha'is are routinely killed in the street. Baha'is have no right. If a crime is committed against them, they have no recourse. They can't go to the police. You can kill a Baha'i and nobody will do anything. There are statements by groups like Amnesty International that say that what the Iranian mullahs, the priests, are doing, the Islamic priests, is they're gearing up for the extermination of the Baha'is, much like the Nazis with the Jews in Germany 50 years ago. So, but Baha'is view this process as a transition. On one hand, it shows the breakdown of the old system of thinking. At the same time, it talks about the birth of a new age of thinking, a new way of thinking. And so one of the things the Baha'i Faith also teaches is that we need a system of world law, and we need a system of world government. Much like the 13 colonies in this country 200 years ago, the 13 colonies were all separate governments, separate religions, separate cultures. And because of an outside threat, they learned that they had to learn to cooperate and work together. And out of that cooperation came the United States of America. The Baha'i view is that one day we will have the same thing on a global level. So in Bible terms, this is the New Jerusalem. This is the coming of a total new system. And it's something that I think is desperately needed. But, in conclusion, as the quote said at the beginning of the presentation, there can be no doubt whatever that the peoples of the world of whatever race or religion derive their inspiration from one heavenly source and are subjects of one God. So I know that the Episcopal people are well on the path to that objective, and for that I applaud you. I do have one recommendation before I close. When my wife and I lived in Carbondale, Illinois, Southern Illinois, for the last 28 years before we moved here. My grandson was 8 years old at the time, lived here with his father, and we decided to leave Southern Illinois to come help raise the grandson. But Carbondale, Illinois is the home of Southern Illinois University. So it's kind of a center of learning in a region that is not so much known for learning. Some of the surrounding towns are more known for the Ku Klux Klan. So in this city, there was a program that is now over 20 years old. It's a religion dialogue series. It's where every month people would get together and they would have a panel up front of leaders of various world religions. So they would have an Islamic panelist, a Christian panelist, a Jewish panelist. They had Baha'i panelists, and it kind of rotated, so everybody kind of got their chance. So once a month, we would get together and they would pick a topic, and the panelists would give their religion's viewpoint on that topic. And then after they break for punch and cookies, they get back together and take questions from the audience and have a dialogue. So what I would recommend that we do in this area for Walton Beach, and there are plenty of venues where we could do this, is to recreate that in this country, in this city, where we could get together on a monthly basis and talk about the things that we have in common and talk about and learn to cooperate. I was very active in a group in Carbondale, the Interfaith group. We also got involved in the National Study Circles group, which is also a wonderful program. One time we had a rabbi come in from St. Louis, about 2 hours away. And what he did in St. Louis is get these people from religious backgrounds together and have service projects, not really discuss religion so much, but just get together to work together to achieve something for humanity. So I don't know if anybody here would be interested in doing that. You could talk to Father Eric, you could talk to me. I do have some cards here that have my contact information on it, so I'll just leave them here on the table. I'll give one to you special. So if you want to talk about this more, or if you'd like to continue the discussion with me or others later on, you're more than welcome. So I thank you for allowing me to speak. I hopefully tried to establish that, again, that we have more in common than we are different. And so if we could just overlook our biases a little bit and learn to see each other as more like family than enemies. So I guess we can. So I guess questions, is that what you want now? Or?
Yeah, if we have some questions, I have one for you.
Sure.
Joel, you passed around some wonderful books here, and I'm really interested in the 3 Wives, 5 Religions one as a book and study for
available on Amazon.
on Amazon. And,
Yeah.
so that may be something we use here at St. Simon's in the future.
I'll tell you what,
Closer look.
that's my gift to you for allowing me to speak. So thank you. It's a fascinating story, yes.
Good.
Yes.
Well, and it ties right in with the story is a Bible study that we're doing here at St. Simon's this year. And so we are going through the main principal stories in the Bible, and we are kind of digesting them and reading, marking, and inwardly digesting, as we say in the church, those stories. So, and Abraham, of course, as we've found, is that founding story. So it's very interesting. But getting back, my real question is, what can we as individuals, I mean, we're talking some corporate action here as churches and as faith circles, what can we as individuals do to increase our knowledge? Is there one of these books? Is there, should we all be watching Jon Stewart? What can we do to increase our knowledge of different faith traditions? What do you turn to, I guess, as a
I would think just to reproduce these kind of things in situations like this and make it a regular, ongoing thing. As I said, in Southern Illinois, the Interfaith Dialogue Series was held in the Episcopal Church. The city of Fort Walton Beach is building a community center just a few blocks from here. Across the way, we've got a city hall with an auditorium. The venue is not a problem. The problem is the will to do it. So, and what's interesting too is when you get together and start talking with each other, you actually start to make friends. So that's a bonus. So.
other questions?
Yeah.
Father Eric, on the far right side of your library downstairs is a section that's basically centered on, a bit of every religion.
Wow.
And so
Downstairs in our library at
Yes.
St. Simon's.
there's a couple of books that are quick reads that just compare Buddhism to Hinduism to Catholicism to Judaism, and it's a quick read. It's 100 pages long. So there's a few quick synopsis.
Thank you.
Again, I teach 2 comparative religion classes at UWF through the Center through Lifelong Learning Program. This class is Friday morning at 10:15 in the auditorium. Anybody here who wants to attend, it's the auditorium, so we have plenty of seats. The speaker this Friday is Maz Syed, who is a Shia Muslim. He spoke a couple of semesters ago, and someone in the audience raised their hand and said, "What's the deal with you people and ISIS trying to conquer the Middle East?" And he says, "I'm Shia, they're Wahhabi." And people in the audience went, "What?" So Islam is just as diverse as Christianity. There's 2 major splits, but from the two major splits, there are thousands of other little splits. And talking to I usually have a Shia speaker and I also have a Sunni speaker. And I asked the Sunni speaker, where else do you get to interact with the people of the region and explain your religion to them? And he said, this is the only place. So in that sense, I'm very happy that I'm, I guess, providing this service. But anybody here, Friday morning, 10:15, UWF, over on the northwest side of Fort Walton Beach, in the auditorium, you're welcome to attend.
Is that where you go the back way from Walmart? Yeah. That
Yeah,
campus?
yeah. We're on the curve where it curves around to McDonald's.
And where, I've never been on the campus. Will it?
Campus is a circle drive. The auditorium's on the far side. It's the building that says auditorium on the front. So
What time again, I'm sorry?
10:15 Friday.
It's not in the auditorium this way.
Yeah, this Friday they're moving it to room 701, which is in the technology building. But there will be a sign on the front door of the auditorium. The technology building is just to the right side of the auditorium.
Is that strictly an elective class that you
Well, you do, but
Well, yeah, it's not, this Center for Lifelong Learning is not for credit.
it's well enough into the semester.
Center for Lifelong Learning is not as a not-for-credit series. It's a continuing ed thing. They offer approximately 50 classes. If anybody here has a skill that they want to share with the rest of the community, you can start your own class. There are hundreds of people involved. This class, I think there are 32 people enrolled. My afternoon class, which is more of a discussion class, I think I've got about 15. So,
Joe, it's kind of mentioned it is something that you're supposed to register for, but if you want to
Yeah.
come and sit in on a class or two and see if you like it, then next fall you can register for the class.
this is my wife Ronnie back here. Everybody say hi, Ronnie.
But if you want to come in and sit on a class or two, nobody's going to.
Yeah, you're actually supposed to pay money to participate in the series. You can have 4 classes for $50. And my wife is on the board, so that's why she's... So what other questions? Yeah.
Christianity, at least it seems to me, believes itself to be the religion that needs to be hypothesized throughout the world.
Yeah,
Do the rest of these religions
Of course.
have the same philosophy?
yeah. Yeah, and unfortunately, the way that they expanded was usually through the sword. So, and that is pretty much true across the board. As I said, my son was stationed in Germany at Spangdahlem. He was in the Air Force. About 20 minutes from Spang is the city of Trier, or Trier, Germany. Supposedly one of the oldest cities in Germany, and it was the base of operations north of the Alps of Emperor Constantine. So the first Christian emperor was based in Trier. So in Trier, there's a wall, there's a Roman gate, there's a baths, there's a gladiator stadium. There's Constantine's meeting hall, which today is a Baptist church, but it's gigantic. Plus, Constantine built the core of the cathedral that's in Trier. And Constantine's mother was a Christian, so I don't know what influence she had on him to become a Christian. But his mother went back to Israel and brought back artifacts. So the cathedral in Trier actually has a robe without seam that they claim is the robe of Jesus. They have a gold box that they claim contains the sandal of the Apostle Andrew, and they have a crucifixion nail, which they claim. The story is that Empress Helena, Saint Helena, brought back the crucifixion nails, and Constantine incorporated them into the bit of his horse. So they're in the cathedral. What's interesting is that during the Crusades, the Pope announced that infidels were occupying the Holy Land, so we had to go free the Holy Land from the infidels. And anybody that goes to the Holy Land, anyone who kills an infidel goes to heaven. So one of the first places that they gathered was Trier. And they looked around and thought, well, if we're going to travel halfway across the world to kill the infidels, why don't we start here? And the Crusaders, the Christian Crusaders at Trier, killed most of the Jewish population of Trier. kill infidels. So, and there's other stories about how when they got off the boat at Akka in Israel, they looked around and saw people wearing robes and turbans, drew their swords and killed them all, thus killing most of the Christians of Akka. You know, the Christians dressed the same; they're dressed in turbans and robes, and but it was just, I guess, a class of culture, and it was blind fanaticism. So Christianity has its share of wars. So does Judaism. So does Islam. So did the Bhagavad Gita is written during a war. So Isaiah said that a time will come when war will cease, even forever. And part of that is the need for a system of world law that can regulate.
I thought the scripture says we will always have wars and rumors of war.
Well, beginning of Isaiah says that the war will cease from henceforth, even forever. So,
That's
wars.
in Isaiah? Or does it say rumors of war?
That's in Isaiah, yes, at the beginning.
That's in Isaiah too.
So if you the passages that are read in churches on the morning of Christmas, if you continue reading the passage, that's what it says. Of the increase of his government and peace, there shall be no end, and he will establish a system in which war will cease, even forever.
I have one question about the facility. I find it hard to walk a long ways. Where from parking do we?
Where from parking there's an elevator out here, I think. Okay.
Oh, no, I mean for your class, honey. Right.
Oh, well, it's ground floor. So, and there's elevators in the buildings too.
I've never been on any of the things.
Well, if you want to come Friday, it's going to be in room 701, but there's elevators and there should be a note on the front door.
7th floor?
No, building 7, which is the technology building right next to the auditorium. So, sure.
Joe, interested in your discussion about the persecution of Baha'is in Iran. Are Baha'is eligible to own property? Are they allowed to have mobility?
Baha'i is actually illegal in Iran, so it's iffy. If anybody wants anything for any reason, they can take it. As I said, they have no rights, so you could, if you were Baha'i in Iran, I could attack you, I could rob you, I could kill you. You're just wasting your time calling the police. So.
Why are they still in Iran and why don't they go somewhere else? Yeah, why are they still in Iran? Why don't they go somewhere else?
Well, many have left, but they started out with, I think the city of Tehran actually at one time had a couple 100,000 Baha'is in it. So you get a couple 100,000 of anything in one city and it really becomes a threat quickly.
They're only allowed to leave if they denounce their Baha'is.
Yeah, if you, at the border, if you say I'm no longer a Baha'i, then you can leave. When you're in prison, and this happened with many of the people who were executed, they said all you do is sign a piece of paper saying that you convert to Islam and you can go free. And some did that, most didn't. They actually hung 10 women who were teaching school. The youngest one, I think, was 15 years old. They hung them one at a time for the maximum amount of terror. So most people in the world don't know that this is going on, but it's going to be short-lived. I suspect that the leadership of Iran by the mullahs is not going to be very much longer. But I know dozens and dozens of Iranian people, and the media in this country has made us want to think that Iran is our enemy. The people that I know are just the most wonderful people that I've ever met. Iraq also. When Khomeini returned to Iran from Paris, the female population of Iran was about 10% literate. This is a Muslim population. The Baha'i population was 100% literate. So this is the difference in the emphasis on education. Two groups within the same country. One is totally literate, the heads of corporations, and when Khomeini came in, all that ceased. So I don't want to really stress that too much, but just be aware that what happened in Germany with the Nazis 60 years ago is happening right now in Iran. So, and the name of the program right now that they're trying to publicize this is Education Under Fire, where the Baha'is are not allowed to go to college. If you put on your college admission that you're a Baha'i, forget it. You cannot go to college. So,
Joe has a question.
yeah.
Just off topic a little bit, but we brought up the Crusades a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's been in the news recently, obviously, as explanation for what's going on in the world. One translation of the Crusades was, there were 5 Crusades, and they were defensive in nature, trying to give Christians access to the Holy Land again, after 500 to 600 Islamic caliphates into Europe. That's a more palatable translation for Christians.
Yeah.
Where do you place that translation?
Well, it's obviously a conflict of cultures. Islam developed for hundreds of years before the Christians finally woke up and said, hey, what's going on over there? What's interesting is that, just take a couple minutes. The basics of Islam is that Muhammad was a true prophet, and upon his death, supposedly he named his cousin and his daughter's wife as the head of the religion. This is the Imam Ali. So the Sunni-Shia split is that the Shia side follows the family line, succession of leaders through blood relatives of Muhammad. And Muhammad said that a time will come when one from his family, Muhammad said that Islam was split into 72 sects. The overwhelming majority wrong, except for a tiny minority. Another place he said that Islam will become like a broken pot that no longer holds water. But he said that one from my family line will come and renew Islam. So this is the Shia side. So the speaker on February 13th is Maz Syed. He's a Shia. In fact, the word Syed means descendant of Muhammad. A Syed is a descendant of Muhammad. So that's why they track this, because a descendant of Muhammad will arise and renew Islam. And the Islamic definition of Islam is the religion that started with Abraham. So Abraham, Moses, Jesus, that's all Islam. The other side, the rival faction, thought that Ali was too young to lead the community, so they started electing their leaders. So they elected 3 caliphs, and Ali was actually elected the 4th, but by that time, Islam had split so dramatically that there was no fixing it. What happened after Ali was killed, and the people that conquered the Middle East were the Sunnis. And what happened is a family who used to be Muhammad's greatest enemies in Mecca, the Umayyad family, stepped in, seized control, and turned Islam into a family dynasty. So for the next 150 years, it was Islamic leaders, or it was Umayyad leaders only. Supposed to be elected, but it was a dynasty. After the Umayyads, the Abbasids stepped in, another dynasty, and it was the Abbasid dynasty from then on. The Abbasids killed all the Umayyads except for one. So the Sunni side actually killed all the family descendants of Muhammad's family. Killed every single, there were 12 of them, killed them all. So what we have today is the faction that says that there should have been a dynasty. And that extended up into Turkey and into recent years. So this is the people that stepped in, and so these were the Crusaders. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that Islam is just as split and divided as any other group, and there is no one Islam. In fact, I've got a presentation on here about the people that just conquered, what's the country just below Saudi Arabia? Yemen? So we talked about them, and they're Yazidis. That's just another little tiny split of Islam. They believe only in the 5th Imam in the line of Muhammad's family. So Saudi Arabia is Wahhabis, very militant. This is who ISIS is. very militant. The first thing that the Wahhabis did when they came into existence is they marched on the city of Karbala, which is the holy site of the Shias, and destroyed it. So, and that's what they're doing now. They're destroying the relics throughout the world. But, are we still out of time, or what? Are we still have time, or?
Mary, you have one more view.
This has been really helpful to me. I think what I recognize is you're talking about that we have different beliefs, but we share many common values, and we need to build on.
Our core values are identical. So
I just wanted to throw it out that, and this is kind of an advertisement, I guess, but in this very space, Friday morning we'll meet, and then probably Friday night we will welcome the homeless in here.
Oh, good.
We're part of the cold weather shelter network, and we would love to have people from any faith who just share that common value. That's something I realize today that the churches that have formed the network have really worked among the local Christian churches, and maybe we haven't reached out enough to churches who are not Christians. So if anyone here is not Episcopalian Christian, just if we share that value of caring for each other, you are more than welcome to join us, and I'm sure the other churches that are part of that network. Thank you.
I would just like to extend that. I have retired as an instructor in a business college.
Okay.
I'm living in my car. And
Okay.
this has been the kindest, most tender-hearted church, as are all of them. But they hand me envelopes and I haven't even asked for anything. We fellowship together. I've never eaten so good as I have in the world alone. Really, I want to hire the clerk at the mission. What a program that is. It's 14 years old, and those 5 churches, and not all of us are alcoholic bums. You know, I can't stand alcohol, but you're 1 foot away from being homeless. Believe you me, I'm soon to enter back on the other side, and I will never forget how I was treated. And it makes me thus treat them, not looking at them as just bums that are lazy and standing on the corner begging for money. They're not that. They're businessmen, they're college educated.
I think if you could sum up this whole process and what you just said in one word, I think it would be Christ-like.
Amen.
So I think that's every single one of you. This is when I think Christ-like, this is what I imagine. So, and for that, I really applaud you and encourage. So there's contact information on the table here. If you would like to talk with me some more, please do. I did write a web page. It's on the card. It's about the messianic prophecies of the world's religions and shows how they all converge. The timetables, the events.
Well, thank you again. Why don't we all stand and sing the doxology? Praise God from whom all blessings